Hello you, I'm in. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. Yes, my mic keeps falling off, so I'm gonna have to hold it. Long time no see again. I guess most of my crime cases I talked about are too cold and too far away from English words, hence I don't get much recommendation from the algorithms. Trying to earn some tips from the internet is so hard, but oh well, I'd love to share anyway. So today I bring you a story of a female serial killer in China. The perpetrator of this series of crime is not a sexual deviant, but rather a normal woman with a strong sense of responsibility. She was living under some stupid moral and narrow social wills, and it was totally suffocating environment. After experiencing extremely terrible and unfortunate events, she finally snapped. Okay, so let me change a bit of a narration perspective and bring you back to the very beginning of the 21st century. In 1970, Su Hong was born in Heilongjiang province in China, which is the northernmost province of China, a very, very cold place. Imagine you being her. You were the eldest daughter, and your parents always taught you to be considerate of your younger siblings and to help out at home. As you have seen it, your parents worked extremely hard to make a living to raise you and your siblings. But it was poverty, endless struggles in finance, though your parents love you dearly. Grow up poor means you are more sensitive than most of the kids in your age. So you know you have to study hard and get a degree and a better job to help the family. And hard work pays off. You successfully entered the local city's health school to study at the age of 16. You know, you are somewhat sorted. This is one of the best career women like you could dream of. Because there's almost a guaranteed job waiting ahead of you after graduation. And you know what? Life seems to give you mercy. You interned at a very good local hospital in the city. After a year or two, you still couldn't get proper contract from the hospital and you feel like your family needed you. Right? If you could live near to them, you can take care of your parents and younger siblings. Especially now that you are equipped with a lot of medical knowledge many of your fellows wouldn't know of. If there's some emergency, you could be useful not only to your families but also to the villagers. Maybe it's time for you to return home and open a private clinic. And you are 20 when you made this decision. All the world is in your hands because you are young and kind. Everything was great since you have your own clinic here in your hometown. People liking you a lot. For once in your life, you started to feel happy, except though you are single. Resources in China's public health sectors are very uneven. Even city hospitals vary greatly in quality, let alone village clinics. Many rural areas didn't even have private clinics to serve the community. It was very difficult for rural people to get medical treatment. So when you opened a private clinic, it was more than just making money. It was a great way to give back to the community. This greatly improved your social status. People no longer referred you to as the eldest daughter of a poor family, but as the doctor of the village clinic, which is a very honorable title, especially since you were still single, young, pretty, and healthy. You became very desirable in the marriage market. Looking back, you could have chosen the wealthiest man in your area or someone with good looks and character. But you met your middle school first love again. The dopamine overwhelmed all your rational thinking. When you met your first love again as adults, it didn't take long for you to fall for him again. To make up for past regrets, you quickly got married. While you are enjoying your sweet romance, you wouldn't know or imagine that marriage is a whole another world. Your sweet lover suddenly stops whispering sweet words to you, And your life suddenly includes a lot more chores besides love and work. You argue with your husband over trivial matters. Why? Think about it. After working all day long, dealing with sad and sick patients, carefully administering treatments and hoping everything goes well, you finally get home, a place that should help you relax. Instead, you find yourself picking up socks and shoes thrown around, cleaning a snack and trash-filled coffee table, and dragging your tired body into the kitchen to cook dinner. While cooking, you realize the spice jars are almost empty, so you have to stop and go to the store. Meanwhile, what's your husband doing? Maybe he's reading, chatting with neighbors, or doing anything that relaxes him. Over time, you start to resent your husband. Clearly, your marriage is heading for trouble. Just 1 month after the wedding, your husband cheats on you. You find it unbelievable. Why? After all you've done, your husband's response is infidelity. Your love for him vanishes the moment you discover his affair. You are a well-educated woman and you don't want this mess marriage or this unfaithful man anymore, right? You want a divorce. Leave this suffocating relationship. So you tell your parents about your idea, hoping for their support. But their reaction is the opposite of what you expected. They say, quoted, in the village, relationships last forever, and one staying will be remembered for generations. A woman divorcing is so shameful. You will only think about your own happiness and not care about your sister and brother's future. No one will want to marry them because their elder sister is a divorced woman. Even before they spoke, you knew they wouldn't agree with your decision, but their words crushed your idea completely. A woman's life is supposed to be about marriage and children, right? You think to yourself. You stopped yourself from crying and decided you needed a way to keep your man. Maybe having a child will bring your husband back, you think. Get pregnant and give birth to a daughter. Things at home don't change. The newborn takes up all your time. Feeding, waking up at night, changing diapers, cooking, all by yourself. Besides the baby, your husband acts like a big baby too, expecting everything to be done for him. Whereas no one at home appreciates your efforts. If you do things well, it's expected. If not, you are strongly criticized. The high stress of taking care of the baby makes you, once a patient and gentle person, increasingly irritable. Arguments and conflicts become the norms. Your husband resents your change and finally leaves. When the baby is only 9 months old, he is going south to find work. You finally understand why all the village women look the same. Only by living this life do you realize you can't do anything about it. You have to swallow the bitterness and maintain the family's dignity. You and your daughter are left behind with no other source of income. You have to run the clinic and take care of your young daughter. Life's hardships make you lose your youthful charm, becoming tanned, rough, and efficient. As the eldest daughter, you are used to enduring hardships, but your pampered younger siblings can't stand this predictable life. In 2000, your sister left her son with your parents and moved south with her husband to join your husband. Well, supposedly. Your brother, tempted by the high wages, follows them. With your siblings gone, burden falls on your elderly parents again. As the oldest, you empathize with your parents' struggles and decide to take on the heaviest load, moving back home to help them. This time, it's to take care of your siblings' children as well. Besides your parents, you also have to care for your sister-in-law, a 6-year-old nephew, and a 3-year-old niece, making a family of 7 mouths to feed, all relying on you. The clinic's income is no longer enough, so you take over the family's 30 acres of land and start farming. Transitioning from a doctor to a farmer, you have to learn to drive a tractor and a motorcycle. You take on the work of several men with hardly any time to rest. You thought that if you just endured, life would get better, would it? In 2001, during the Chinese New Year, your sister came home for the holidays and brought back a shocking news. Your husband was living with another woman in the south, and she was pregnant. You are heartbroken. You thought the hardships of life had taught you to let go, but when this day came, you realized you could never truly let go of this relationship. I still want this love, and I'm afraid of losing it. Even now, even if nothing had happened, I'm afraid of losing it, and I can't explain why. Su Hong's response during interrogation. You know your husband will never come back, and you've completely lost hope in your marriage, but you still refuse to divorce. You need to maintain this dignity and live in the village for the long term. After so many years, when everyone else has left, you're still there. You've worked so hard to keep up appearances. How could you bear to see all this joy? From then on, you put all your focus on your family. As long as your parents are healthy and your siblings can pursue their dreams freely, all your hard work and suffering are worth it, you think to yourself. But life never seems to go as you wish. In the winter of 2003, your sister and her husband came home for the New Year. You noticed your sister acting very cautiously, which felt off to you. Even though your family isn't wealthy, she was always the pampered youngest daughter and never behaved so timidly. What's going on? Ask her in private. Surprise, surprise. Your little sister whimpering and crying, she sobbed out her story. So your brother-in-law somehow had the habit of drinking now. And that's bad already. He started to beat your little sis. He came home drunk and kicked her, beat her. She couldn't stand the violence and brave up to, bring up the divorce. And that can't, threatening to hurt everyone, including himself. So he chopped off one of his fingers when he was swearing. You could only imagine how bloody and terrifying that scene must be. And God forbid it, your sis got another round of violence right after he hurt himself. Right. He's seeking revenge of his own behavior. Your sister literally didn't know what to do with a husband or, let's say, a nightmare like that. You might not have a clue about such level of domestic violence, but your sister knew it damn well. She felt like she'd lose her life the next time when her husband got drunk. What could you do to help? You told her to run. The very next day, when your sister left, her violent husband, your brother-in-law, come to your home with a kitchen knife. He's waving that blade and asking for his life. Just like your sister knows her husband is a beast, your brother-in-law knows your sister is a wimp. She wouldn't dare to run away from him. He knew it was you who encouraged her to disappear. The brother-in-law holding the knife and asked you in rage about your sister's whereabouts. What would you do? Well, you have been strong as you have years of farming experience now. You wouldn't be scared off by such a coward, so you argued with him. Now that deal has his eyes red. He break into your place, threatening that he would murder his own son, and when his son died, his wife came back. And their son is still a baby crying in his room. This stupid shithead really knows how to push your buttons. He rushed over and knocked him down. And he crawls up and still moving towards to his son's room. Now you cannot think but to hit his head with the alcohol bottle that was literally right there by your hand. The glass shattered around with his head and blood. You stared at the floor where a grease with blood and broken glass pieces. Your head went blank, and you felt numb. Didn't know what to do with it, as now your brain has a repeated voice reminding you that I just killed someone.
You can't remember how long it has passed until your father came home. He finds you sitting in puddle of blood and a cat's broken body in clothes.
Now it's you started to cry and sob out the whole thing to your dad. And your father told you to leave it to him. He will tidy it all up for you. Then your father somehow got a tricycle, covered your brother-in-law's body with a sack, and took it away, carrying a can of diesel with him. And that cold winter day, you looked at the thick snow in front of the house, praying it will cover everything. When your father came back, he said he burnt it. The family never talked about it again. Your sister, who had run away secretly, called you to ask about the family. You didn't know how to answer. Your nephew was just starting to talk and sometimes calling for his dad about, Papa, Papa. Every time you heard it, it tore at your heart and kept you up all night. To keep yourself busy, you worked tirelessly on the farm until you were exhausted. After that, the lights in your house stayed on all night. You also started smoking, sometimes a pack a day. After your brother-in-law's death, your sister struggled to support herself, let alone care for her baby. You felt bad for her, so you texted pretending to be your brother-in-law to his sister, acting to having a sore throat and unable to talk, asking to borrow 10,000 yuan from her. The sister sent the money to your brother-in-law's family immediately. You told his family he was too embarrassed to visit and had asked you to get the money. But of course, they didn't believe you and refused to give the money. Worried about being found out, you used his phone to text your sister and his family. You said he was breaking away and wouldn't come back until he succeeded. And of course, you told them not to look for him. And you know what? That worked. After that, you focused on taking care of your nephew to deal with your guilt. You told your daughter to always let your brother have his way, and she's the eldest in the family. She understood and took care of her sibling just like you have been. Later into the years, when your father died, the whereabouts of your brother-in-law's body became a complete mystery. You lived cautiously until your sister-in-law had a second child, bringing new energy into the family, and it was the boy everyone had hoped for. Seeing the family life brighten up again, you felt there was hope for the future. After having a son, your brother started to act more like an adult. He shortens his New Year holidays and goes back to work in the South early, wanting to earn more to support his family. You supported him unconditionally, taking care of his wife and kids. You remembered how hard it was for you when your husband wasn't around and you had to play both parents. You didn't want your sister-in-law to go through that. You fulfilled your brother's trust and took good care of his wife and kids, making sure they were well fed and healthy. Your sister-in-law was very grateful for your efforts. However, after 6 months, your sister-in-law decided to move down south to be with your brother. Remember how tough it was to be apart from your husband for so many years, and for the sake of your brother's happiness, you chose to continue supporting his kids back in the hometown. Your sister-in-law, understanding your sacrifice, gave you 14,000 yuan for the kids. You reluctantly accepted it. With elderly parents needing care and 400 kids, the whole burden fell on you. From morning till night, you worked non-stop while everyone else rested. Despite your exhaustion, you never complained, believing that your sacrifice would lead to family happiness. In November 2005, your sister-in-law came back from the south missing her kids. You are happy to see her, But then your mother discovered that she was having an affair in your hometown. Your mother was heartbroken but said nothing, crying every day. You felt more angry at your sister-in-law thinking about how your husband cheated on you. Her reaction had shamed the family. However, to keep things quiet, the family acted as if nothing happened. Your sister-in-law got a backhoe because of the weather change, and you helped her with her treatment even though you were frustrated. After she recovered, she prepared to return to the south. Before leaving, she asked for the 14,000 yuan she had left with you earlier. He was shocked because the money had already been spent on the kids' needs, school fees, baby formula, diapers, and other expenses. Your sister-in-law got angry, arguing that she and your brother were also struggling financially and she couldn't find work. She accused you of being greedy for your brother's money. You tried to explain that you weren't keeping the money for yourself and that it was used for the family's expenses. But your sister-in-law refused to listen, insisting that while she wouldn't bother you with the kids in the future, the money must be returned. You felt completely disheartened. You had sacrificed so much for the family's happiness, only to be met with complaints. That night, the elders were out visiting relatives, so you got the 4 kids settled and asleep early. After finishing up your sister-in-law's IV, you helped her to the bathroom to rest. You stayed up late doing housework and looked at your sister-in-law sleeping soundly. At that moment, you felt both despair and anger. As a woman who had been worn down by life, you had become rough and aged, while your sister-in-law remained young and beautiful. The last time you bought new clothes was like 10 years ago, and you had given up all your youth for the family only to receive ungrateful complaints in return. The more you thought about it, the more it felt unfair. Remembered how your sister-in-law was caught in bed with someone else, living recklessly, how you had preserved your dignity for a lifetime. To her, it seemed worthless. The frustration inside you couldn't be contained, as if an invisible hand had stirring up the anger within you. As if enchanted, you grabbed a rope and strangled your sister-in-law to death. And this time facing the body, you are no longer panicked. You are calmer than usual, as you know everything will be just fine. Like how your dad managed the body, in the end of the day, the snow will cover everything and bring everyone a new life. Because of the cold weather, many families in northern rural areas built this underground cellar in their yards. In the past, during fall and winter, after the garden was picked and there were no supermarkets to buy vegetables from, people needed a way to stop their veggies from freezing. So they would dig a underground cellar about 2 to 3 meters deep to store vegetables. They'd also put a few barrels of water inside, which helps maintain a temperature of around 6 degrees to 5 degrees there inside the cellar. Vegetables like potatoes, radishes, and cabbage stay fresh in the cellar and can last until spring. Your family did the same, of course. So you can go down there and dig a few shovels to bury your sister-in-law's body. Right. Easy. When your parents came home, you calmly told them that your sister-in-law had run off with someone after receiving a phone call. You also left a fake note at the front door saying she had left home and wouldn't be coming back. Your parents then naturally called your brother to tell him his wife had eloped and wouldn't return. To deceive your sister-in-law's family, you sent them a text pretending to be her, saying she was living with another man and wouldn't be coming back, and asked them to take care of her parents. You are sure these lies will fool everybody. In the village, relationships are long lasting and a scandal is remembered for generations. No one would talk about it. As expected, both families kept silent. No one looked for her or reported her missing. It was as if she had never been existed. Even when the kids asked about their mother, everyone avoided the topic. For 5 years, you kept secretly dumping garbage and manure into the underground cellar, burying the secret deeper and deeper. In 2006, your parents passed away, leaving you with just the 4 kids. Right, your own kid, and 2 kids from brother, 1 kid from your sister. But you couldn't escape your own guilt. You felt sorry for the children and wanted to make amends, giving them all you love. You gave up buying clothes for yourself, dressing the kids in the best clothes you could find. Despite being a vegetarian for over a decade, you served them delicious meat. You even sacrificed your own daughter's future to help pay for your niece and nephew's education. You single-handedly took care of your parents until they passed away and looked after 4 left-behind children. Your sacrifice made you a model in the village. The Su family has a capable daughter. Only you know how many lonely and helpless days you endured for that praise. But life didn't get any easier for you. There's this big family in your village with many siblings and a wide-ranging business. They are well off in the village. There are 2 brothers from this family. They are Liu Xiuyun and Liu Xiubin. But for the storytelling, I'd just call them John and Jason respectively. John and Jason often drove out of town for supplies. So you often ask them to bring back daily necessity for the kids, and they always agreed cheerfully. But you never imagined that this neighborly help had a hidden cost. In May 2009, the nephew you brought up broke his leg while playing basketball. You took him to the city hospitals. The doctor said he needed surgery right away, or his leg might become disabled. But your savings are already running out, and your brother and sister couldn't help as they are struggling themselves. Feeling guilty and worried for the child, you couldn't help but decided to borrow money. However, people in the village are rarely willing to lend money, and you couldn't get enough for the surgery. In desperation, you thought of Jason. When you called him, he said he didn't have enough cash, but he'd borrowed 5,000 from his brother John and quickly brought the money to the hospital, solving your urgent need. Moved by his help, you immediately wrote an IOU to Jason, promising to repay him. But you didn't expect that once you opened Pandora's box of human nature, things would spiral out of control. Jason raped you in the name of paying the debt. What could you do? You didn't have the cash, and he's a beast. In addition to life's existing challenges, your another nephew fell ill shortly after this one being discharged from the hospital, right? What other choice do you have? You could only suffer the rapes again and again to borrow more money from John and Jason to save that sick kid. Finally, eventually, all the kids you take care of are back to health. You feel like this shit should come to an end. John is in his 60s, and an old man like him, despite loving to rape, his sex ability is shit. He has the problem of erecting, and you have the problem of sleeping. Since that very first winter day, your life took a huge change, right? Now that you are no longer this young and innocent lady you once be, you needed sleeping pills to sleep. So you are older and weaker nowadays. You are no compared to a fully grown man physically, even though he's at his 60s. He's still quite strong from all the farm works. So if you want to get rid of this old man, what could you do? You tell him to take Viagra when he forces you to have sex this time. What's that? A medicine should help you to get hard. So you hand over your sleeping pills for him to take. This uneducated old guy trusts you as you're the doctor and you know it. He always think of you as a victim. He never thought you would hurt him. Therefore, you watch him falling asleep. Then you strangled him to death with a rope, just like how you did it with your sister-in-law. You dumped the old man's body in the vegetable cellar again and threw garbage and waste into the hole to hide the smell from decaying body. And one demon is done. You are waiting for the other to come. A few days later, Jason comes to you as expected. He forces to have sex, and you told him about this magic medicine with which you'd feel like king. Follow through the same routine, and you make a wish. I wanted to call the police too, but in the village, gossip can ruin you. It's too embarrassing for me and the kids. People know I care about saving face, so I couldn't do it. Sohong during her interrogation. Now let's pull you out from the character of being Suhong. She got caught by the police when John and Jason's families reported them missing, and what exposed her was another joke in her life. She pretended to be Jason and sent some text message to his family, right? Telling them that he accidentally killed his brother John, so he had to run away. The text message was perfectly written, with flawless grammar and punctuation. All the sentence was complete and elegant, which didn't match Jason. Usually his messages were full of mistakes and he didn't know how to use punctuation properly. He would use a comma, period, exclamation, all as a single mark. Look at the difference between the two messages. The one on the left-hand side was written by Suhong and the other by Jason. Even if you don't understand Chinese, you can see how odd the circle punctuation marks are. When the police caught Suhong, they naturally searched the garbage-filled cellar and found 3 bodies. As I mentioned before, every family has this underground cellar, but no one fills it with garbage since it's like an underground refrigerator for storing food, right? So the police were suspicious when they found garbage in Su Hong's cellar. After finding the bodies, Su Hong confessed to her crimes. She cried and talking about the children. I pushed myself down a path with no return. To outsiders, I can say this, but to my family, the harm is huge. To outsiders, this kind of harm can never be fixed. But now I feel most sorry for my children. This isn't good for them. It's such a harm. Su Hong's biological daughter was 14, very sensible, and took good care of her younger sibling, just like Su Hong did in her youth. She was the least favorite at home and always made sacrifices for the other 3 children. Su Hong's sister's son was 18, her brother's daughter was 12, and his son was 8. They all called Su Hong mom, not knowing it was their mom who killed their biological father and mother. When the police called Su Hong's brother and sister to tell them what happened, they cried, of course. In prison, Su Hong was also very emotional when she heard about their reaction. If only time could go back. After confessing everything with the cops, Su Hong felt at peace and fell asleep in the police station for 2 whole hours, the longest she had slept in 7 years. Feeling unburdened, Su Hong awaited her legal judgment. Death came as expected, but Su Hong was unusually calm. That's the end of our story for the day. I wish you a good day or night, and please don't feel offended when I put you as the protagonist. Life is unfair and everyone has happy and unhappy times. I hope you can quickly bounce back when you're unhappy and always put yourself first. You need to love yourself to love others, right? So Su Hong got trapped in her own self-pity, creating more and more chains she couldn't escape from. She didn't have to do that. She could have moved south to work and started her own life. Many people from the north moved south in China, making money and then bring their elderly parents away from the cold and poverty. Anyway, thanks for watching and please like and subscribe so I can see you in my next video. Bye bye.